Jay-Z sold out Yankee Stadium, but the Bronx had already paid for it. And standing approximately 10 blocks away from that stadium in a community that gave up public parkland so it could be built, I heard a different question. Not did Jay-Z sell out, but what did the Bronx have to surrender so this stadium could exist? And who actually owns what was built in its place? This is the capitalist activist, where consumers become owners. Let me begin with the part of Jay-Z's argument that I think is correct. He challenged people who were criticizing his partnership with Target to ask whether they were boycotting Amazon, Google, Instagram, YouTube, and the other enormous corporations that have become embedded in our daily lives. That's a legitimate point. You are not really boycotting Google while watching this video on YouTube. Google owns YouTube. You decide not to shop at Amazon, but Amazon provides digital infrastructure to companies and institutions that most of us interact with without ever seeing the Amazon name. A handful of corporations own an extraordinary amount of the infrastructure through which we communicate, shop, work, watch, entertainment, and participate in modern life. So yes, consumer boycotts can become selective. They can become symbolic. And sometimes we announce that we have stopped supporting a corporation without fully understanding how deeply that corporation is woven into the economy. Jay-Z was right to expose that contradiction, but that cannot be the end of the conversation, because there's a difference between an ordinary person navigating a marketplace dominated by major corporations and a billionaire choosing to form a highly visible partnership with one of them. Those are not the same position, and power must be judged according to position. I am from the Bronx, born and raised. This is not an abstract conversation for me. When the new Yankee Stadium was built, the community lost access to much of the Makeham's Dam Park and other recreational spaces. Bronx children and families then waited years for replacement fields, including my brothers who played football in that park. And in the Bronx, the park is not just a patch of grass. Many people grew up in apartments without backyard. The park became the backyard. It's where children play. It's where families gather. It's where elders sit. It's where basketball games happen. It's where the neighborhood gets to breathe. But the park also holds a particular cultural meaning here. The Bronx helped create hip hop through congregation, through people gathering outside, through block parties and park jams, through DJs, dancers, MCs, and young people turning shared public space into culture. Hip-hop did not begin inside a corporate arena. It grew in parks, community rooms, schoolyards, neighborhood spaces where people could come together. So when a community like the Bronx loses a park, it not only loses recreational space, it loses a gathering place, a creative space, a piece of the infrastructure through which community and culture are formed. I would not say the loss destroyed the Bronx. The Bronx is far too resilient for that, but it disrupted the community. It placed another burden on a neighborhood that had already been asked to absorb more than its share of development, displacement, and institutional decision-making. So when Jay-Z stood inside Yankee Stadium and responded to accusations that he sold out, I could not hear that line only as clever wordplay. Because before he sold out Yankee Stadium, the Bronx had already surrendered something so that Yankee Stadium could be built. And we have seen a version of this story before. Jay-Z became one of the most recognizable public faces associated with bringing the Nets and the Barclays Center to Brooklyn. For many people, that represented something powerful. A Black man from Marcy Projects participating in ownership and development of a major professional sports franchise, that mattered. Representation inside of ownership matters, but the Barclays development was also fiercely opposed by residents concerned about displacement, rising rents, eminent domain, congestion, and promises of affordable housing and jobs that they feared would not fully reach the community. Both things can be true. Jay-Z's rise was extraordinary, but the community surrounding these developments had legitimate questions about who would benefit from the transformation. That tension is exactly where the capitalist activist lives, because Black ownership does not automatically equal Black community power. A Black person can gain access to an institution without the community gaining meaningful influence over the institution. Representation is not redistribution. Access is not accountability. And proximity to power is not the same as sharing power. Now let's talk about Target. I personally chose not to participate in the Target boycott, not because I believed every decision Target made was correct, not because I believe diversity and equality and inclusion policies are meaningless. I made a strategic decision based on my position as both a consumer and a shareholder. Target employs Black workers. It carries products from Black-owned brands. It operates in communities like mine. The Target near Yankee Stadium gives residents access to groceries, fresh food, household goods, products that have not always been easily available in underserved neighborhoods. I looked at the total relationship between the company and the Black community, and I considered what Target pulled back. I considered what Target continued to provide. I considered my values. I decided that my influence would be better exercised through ownership than complete withdrawal. Someone else may weigh those facts and reach a different conclusion. That's legitimate because strategic economic participation requires judgment. I do not personally believe that every corporate DEI program is a hill I'm willing to die on, but Blackness is. What a company does for the Black community at large matters to me. What it provides, who it employs, whose products it carries, where it operates, who benefits from its presence. I weighed all of that and decided what Target continued to bring into communities like mine was more valuable than completely walking away from the company. Does that mean I surrendered my right to criticize Target? It means I choose a different method of influence. I choose to remain in the room as an owner. But here is the important distinction. I am a woman living in an underserved Bronx community attempting to exercise the limited power available to an individual shareholder. Jay-Z is not standing in that position. He is a billionaire. He is a major cultural institution. He is a corporate partner. He is a business owner. And he is one of the most influential Black figures in the world. The more power you possess, the greater the questions we are entitled to ask about how you use it. You cannot respond to those questions only by pointing out the imperfections of ordinary consumers. A person buying toothpaste at Target is not exercising the same power as a billionaire entering a national partnership with Target. One is navigating the system. The other can negotiate with it. So my question for Jay-Z would not simply be, why did you work with Target? My question would be, what did you require from Target in exchange for access to your name, your album, your history, your Black consumers who help create your value? Did the partnership include investment in Black-owned suppliers? Did it create jobs or internship opportunities? Did it direct capital into communities like the Bronx or your beloved Brooklyn? Did it produce measurable commitments that the public can evaluate? Because the issue is not whether successful Black people should work with corporations. They should. But the issue is whether we enter those rooms only to secure a deal for ourselves or whether we use our leverage to bring enforceable benefits back through the door. That's capitalist activism. And then Jay-Z mentioned Colin Kaepernick. That was the part that did not sit well with me. Kaepernick put his career at risk to force this country to confront police brutality and racial injustice. Whatever anyone thinks of his strategy, he sacrificed something real: his career, his platform, his ability to continue earning inside the league. And he should not become a prop in someone else's defense. Jay-Z's relationship with the NFL has always been complicated for me because there was a moment when people were asking the public to stand with Kaepernick and apply pressure to the league. Then Jay-Z entered a partnership with that same institution and told us we were beyond kneeling. Now, he may believe that entering the room gave him more influence than standing outside of it. That's an argument I understand. It's similar to the argument I made about remaining a Target shareholder. But when you enter that room, the community has a right to ask what your access produced, what changed, what became possible, who benefited, what did the institution agree to do that it would not have done without your involvement? Because access is not the victory. The outcome matters. My only critique of the NFL protest is not that Kaepernick failed to do enough. It is that he was left too isolated. Imagine if Black NFL players across the league had collectively refused to play. Not one quarterback, not a few symbolic gestures. The talent, the labor, the people without whom there is no game. What would have happened if the economic machine had been forced to stop? If you really want an institution to pay attention, sometimes the people creating the value have to withhold the value. That is the difference between individual protest and organized power. And it reveals something that both consumer boycotts and celebrity partnerships missed. Consumers have power, workers have power, shareholders have power, but each group becomes far more powerful when it acts collectively. A fan can stop watching. A worker can stop playing. A shareholder can introduce a proposal, vote against directors, question executives, and organize other owners. Each pressure point reaches a different part of the institution. And sometimes the strongest movement uses all three. Consumer power from the outside, worker power from within, ownership power at the top. Here's what Jay-Z's freestyle ultimately made me think about. Black communities are frequently invited to celebrate the arrival of powerful institutions, a new stadium, a new arena, a new retailer, a new corporate partnership. We are told that development has arrived. Jobs are coming, opportunity is coming, representation is coming, and sometimes real benefits do come. But too often the community is asked to provide the culture, the consumers, the workers, the land, the attention, the legitimacy. Then ownership leaves the neighborhood. We provide everything that makes the institution valuable, but we remain outside the room where its priorities are decided. This is the relationship I want to change, because Black culture creates value. Black labor creates value. Black consumers create value. Black neighborhoods create value. The question is whether Black communities will own enough to influence where that value goes. So no, I'm not interested in a purity test. I do not believe every person must boycott every corporation that makes a decision they oppose. That would be almost impossible in the modern economy. But I do believe we need more sophisticated questions. Before you boycott a company, understand what it owns. Before you invest in a company, Understand how it behaves. Before you defend a corporate partnership, ask what the community received. Before we celebrate Black access to power, ask whether that access produced Black community influence. And before a billionaire lectures ordinary people about the contradictions in their consumptions, ask what that billionaire did with the extraordinary leverage available to him. You may decide to boycott. You may decide to remain a customer and become a shareholder. You may decide to organize workers, consumers, and investors, but the decision should be strategic because the goal is not to prove that we are morally proof. The goal is to build power. Jay-Z is right about one thing. We are operating inside systems that are difficult to escape. But escaping the system is not the only option. We can learn how it works. We can understand who owns it. We can organize inside it. We can use our labor. We can use our consumption. We can use our ownership. We can demand something in return for the enormous value our communities create. The Bronx should not only be the place where the stadium stands. Brooklyn should not only be the culture used to sell the arena. Black consumers should not only be the market used to make the partnership profitable. We should have a voice in what gets built, who benefits, and what remains after the performance is over.
This is The Capitalist Activist.
We do not just invest to make money. We invest to make change. Own what you consume.